Allow me to reintroduce Ms. Edem Wosornu, OCHA's Operations and Advocacy Director. She is briefing us from Port Sudan about the situation, obviously, in Port Sudan and in Sudan in general. Ms. Edem, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Shireen, and good afternoon from Port Sudan. Good morning or good afternoon, New York. As you said, I've been in Sudan, Port Sudan, Atbara, Khartoum, and back in Port Sudan this week. It was OCHA's first visit to Khartoum, the capital, since we left April 2023. Other UN agencies, of course, have been on the ground. Other NGOs have also been there, but it was our first visit. And I have to say, what I saw in Khartoum was devastating. It was a decimated city, a Khartoum that was once buzzing with life, almost a ghost town. A Khartoum that is utterly destroyed. You've seen the footage from other entities, but seeing the first-hand account of what we saw was quite heart-wrenching. I have to admit. The good news is we were able to take some of our Sudanese colleagues with us, UN OCHA workers who are from Khartoum. The bad news, of course, devastated by what they saw. I was, of course, in Sudan 20 years ago. I started my OCHA career in Sudan, Darfur, and before that, UNHCR and other parts of the country. And it was my first time back in Khartoum. We went back to our OCHA offices where we couldn't enter the premise because of unexploded ordnance, explosive remnants of war, not cleared by, of course, the United Nations Mine Action Service, who've been clearing different offices across the city. I have never seen anything like this before in my almost quarter of a century service to the United Nations and to humanitarian action in several difficult war-torn contexts. This is the worst I've seen it. Let me salute our Sudanese national staff from across national NGOs, international NGOs, UN. They are carrying quite a lot, the emotion, none of them not affected by all of this. The emergency response rooms, what they did during the war must be saluted and must be hailed and must be honored. I was humbled by what I saw and the stories I have heard over the last 2 years. This is my third visit to Sudan, but of course the first to the capital. I heard some good stories, and good stories being the heroic efforts of humanitarians. And I'll give you, Shireen, if you allow me, 2 examples of an international NGO, Emergency, an Italian NGO, who focus on cardiac services, Salam Hospital in Soba outside Khartoum city, Italian doctors who never left, nurses, health workers with their Sudanese counterparts who stayed during the siege of Khartoum. They negotiated access with the RSF and the Sudan Armed Forces. They stayed and they lived IHL every day, international humanitarian law, where civilian assets, hospitals are protected. Unfortunately, not all other hospitals and civilian assets were protected, as I said before. The Save the Children, I was also able to see Save the Children and the Ministry of Health's cholera response facility, both where you had 3,900 cholera patients come through at some point. 62 died, unfortunately, but the Save the Children and the Ministry of Health supported and saved several lives. At the height of the cholera response, 350 people a day, and at the visit that I saw firsthand, 1 or 2 patients. So response works when we have access. Response works when we have the facilities and the supplies and assistance necessary. Let me zoom out of Khartoum and tell you what, of course, you know, Sudan is the world's largest crisis. Sudan has 30 million people in need of humanitarian assistance, with out of the 48 estimated population of.
We lost the sound. Edem, can you say a few words now? No, we lost the sound. Technician colleagues, please. Okay, can you say? 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 Please keep.
Please keep.
Hello, 1, 2, 3. Testing. Ms. Edem, can you please say something? Still, no sound.
Okay, OCHA, you can go ahead and talk.
Can you hear me, Shireen?
Yes, now we can
Yes,
hear
now
you.
we can. Now 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 we can. By the UN and its partners. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
And we have, what we're asking for is basically 55 cents per day per person in Sudan. And that's it, right? So where we have access, we're able to assist. Where we have safety and security assurances, we're able to assist. Where we have enough supplies and funding, we're able to assist. This is the Sudan crisis, as I said, the largest displaced crisis, the largest health crisis, the largest number of people in need. I think you get the picture. Let me zero in into Darfur. El Fasher, of course, which you know has been under siege for a year. WFP put out a statement. Zamzam camp has had famine conditions reported a year ago. What we're hearing from our partners on the ground, including UN and NGOs, is a dire situation. Undersecretary General Fletcher has put out their request for a humanitarian pause. We need this pause desperately. We cannot overemphasize the need for the pause because people are risking their lives every day. People are dying from what we can understand on the ground in El Fasher. El Fasher is not the only context under siege, the only city under siege. Of course, El Obeid, Kadugli in South Kordofan as well under siege. And here we have colleagues. I personally engaged with one of our OCHA staff in Port Sudan last year when I was here. She is stuck in Kadugli, cannot get out, supplies running out. And that's for our humanitarian workers, let alone, of course, the population. Let me plead for attention on Sudan, continued advocacy. I'm grateful for this noon briefing. Let me also insist and stress the need for unfettered and unhindered humanitarian access to reach people in need. The psychosocial impact of this crisis and this civil war in Sudan has had unimaginable stress on the average person. Not a single Sudanese that I've met is not affected by this. Our colleagues are displaced, including UN and NGOs. I met colleagues who were displaced 5 to 7 times and placed their families in safe areas outside the country and came back to continue working. Heroic efforts that I have never seen in my, in my career before. I would end, and I know there are lots of questions and interest on Sudan, and for which I am grateful. I will end with the request, of course, for continued funding, for continued advocacy, for the spotlight to be on Sudan. There has to be an end to this. The people are asking for an end to the war that has killed, maimed, and led to significant loss of livelihoods and life. A country, a city, Khartoum, decimated. I'll stop here. Shireen, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to open the floor for questions. Edie, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Wosornu, on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association for doing this briefing. My name, as you probably remember, is Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. A couple of follow-up questions since the sound got to be quite interrupted. Can you tell us again the figures on the number of people needing humanitarian aid, what the United Nations is trying to provide, and how much money you need and how much has been pledged so far? But my broader question is about the issue you raised at the end of your briefing. When is this going to end? With the Rapid Support Forces announcement of their own government, in your conversations, is anybody optimistic that there can even be negotiations, or is this just going to keep dragging on and on? Thank you.
Miss Edem, 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 Miss Edem.
People in need of humanitarian assistance of the 48 million people population of Sudan estimated.
Miss Edem,
13
Miss
point-
You start over because we couldn't hear the beginning of what you said in answer to my questions.
Can you hear me now, Shireen? 30 million people in need of humanitarian assistance of the 48 million population of Sudan, estimated, of course. The UN is targeting 20 million people. That is, we've reached 13 million people with some sort of humanitarian assistance, right? You asked, Edith, about funding. We've received 23% of what we're asking for. We've received almost $1 billion, and we've been able to assist some 13 million people. So you see, when we get the assistance in, when we get the flexible funding, we are able to mobilize. Certainly the World Food Programme, the UNICEF, World Health Organization, UNFPA, IOM, all our UN agencies, funds and programs, as well as, of course, our international and national NGOs are able to mobilize. You asked a very pertinent question. To the Sudanese, they just want this over. They want to return to their homes. To the humanitarians, we are negotiating with whoever we must talk to. We did that from the beginning, from the Jeddah agreements, and through till today. We are speaking to, I met with the SAHO, the RSF humanitarian arm, when I was in Sudan and in Khartoum, Nairobi last year. We will talk to them this year as well. My colleagues in New York at the different levels are talking to the RSF, because we do need to get to people. And I think it's critical as humanitarians that we maintain our focus on the people and negotiate access. We are very open about this also to the authorities in Port Sudan. I did this last year. Under Secretary General Fletcher was here. He went into Darfur. He spoke to Port Sudan authorities. We are speaking to the new government authorities. I met with different entities in the Port Sudan government, And I also met with people in Khartoum, government authorities in Khartoum and Atbara. So we will talk to whoever, but indeed there is desperation from the people of Sudan. They need this to be over and they're calling for this to end. People have suffered way too long and too deeply in this crisis.
Answer to my question. Does anybody there see any prospect of it ending, because you now have the RSF with its own government structure, the government obviously with its government structure, and we here have not heard anything about the possibility of negotiations.
Thank you, is to carry the message from the people, and the people are asking their leaders to, can you hear me? To end this crisis. There are different parts of the UN, obviously, Edith, who are dealing with this. There are different entities who are working on the political processes. I have to focus on what I saw on the ground, which is what I'm sharing with you.
Okay, let's go here and then Ibtisam.
Noreen Hussain with IPS News. I wondered if you could just clarify, of the 20 million people that the UN system is supporting right now, how many of them are women and children? And I wondered if you could perhaps tell us about some of the local humanitarian groups, like the local civil society groups that are also providing assistance or support to the affected groups. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't catch your name or your organization, but I will proceed with the response. Majority, and I believe I will get the statistics, the details for you in detail. It's in our humanitarian response plan, but indeed you are right, a lot of women and a lot of children. I believe it's about 70, 80% for most crises. I can get back on the exact number. We are, and it's an excellent question on working with local actors. I mentioned the emergency response rooms. I spoke with them as far back as 2023, Under Secretary General Fletcher, and before that, others have spoken to them. We engage, the humanitarian coordinator and the humanitarian country team engage with our civil society partners all the time. As I mentioned in my opening, they have been at the front lines and the forefront of this response. Let me also highlight the Sudan Humanitarian Fund. We have given quite a lot of funding as of last year, some $14 million to local organizations who, of course, go through our risk mitigation measures, but we are focused. Let's not forget, this is also part and parcel of the humanitarian reset in working with our local communities, and Sudan is a classic example of that. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Edem, and we will put you in touch with Noreen. We will put you in touch with OCHA regarding the numbers. Ibtisam Azam from Al Arabiya.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, I hope so, at least. Okay, Ibtisam Azam, Al Arabi Al Jadid newspaper. Can you hear me? Okay. So very quickly, if you could say some words regarding psychosocial support, and also if you could walk us through maybe one of the cases that you saw, that we have a better understanding on how things going on the ground. And if you could please wait a few seconds before starting to talk, because for whatever reason we are not getting the first few words. Thank you.
present here as well. Psychosocial supporters, psychosocial supporters, psychosocial supporters, psychosocial supporters, psychosocial supporters, psychosocial supporters. Shireen,
Miss Edem, Miss Edem, Miss Edem, Miss Edem, Miss Edem. I think maybe we have to wrap it up. I am so sorry about this. We will send your question to OCHA as well. Thank you so much. Ms. Adam, I don't know if you hear me now. Apologies for these interruptions and these technical problems that we have. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you.